Hello, my name is Jubal, and I just recently moved in, and I'm still getting used to settling things up, you know, and also helping my parents out, and etc. etc. And right now, I want to start a new series, but from now on, every every Sunday, that's for my schedule of posting the videos. It's called Campfire Talks. There's no podcast, no interview. Like people, no interview channel where people come to my house and they interview in the most random spot of the home, even though I haven't settled in yet. You know, but here's gonna be, what are my thoughts and how I feel about them. Talks and opinions, basically. So this will be the new series, and for the very new episode of here right now, it's called, which I'm gonna be ranting and about bullying and victims. So let's start off with a blunt way I'm gonna answer this rant is, here we go. Because for the past couple of years, that I was watching movies, TV shows, and I watched on YouTube actually. There were like scenarios about like kids being bullied in school, about their personalities, their eggs, their hobbies, or whatever they may be. Also their physical appearance too, and that's one of the biggest factor, because I know nowadays nobody gives a shit about the physical aspects of their matters, but you know and recently I was watching videos about bullying, and I gotta say it really got out of hand. The bullying shit and the victims, and killing the bullies, or they commit suicide, and I have experience with that. So in my last year of high school, I'm 19, I barely graduated. I was going to my class as usual, doing the most boring routine, going to class, to next period class, and until I was going up, or I was in my second period English class, and I was, sitting down doing my classwork or whatnot, and I was seeing this girl got up, like started crying, and then she ran out. And I was like, I'm gonna use contemporary English, I'm gonna sound intellectual, like a pseudo intellectual shit. But yeah, I'm gonna use my real self and my real, or not real self, but like some parts of myself, how I talk to friends, or how I talk to somewhat of my family members, some of them, not my parents, because for respect, basic manners. But I was like, what the fuck's going on? Why is this girl like, fucking crying, in the middle of a fucking, I think it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday, I'm like, what the fuck? And then I was like, all right, let's go on, I eavesdropped it, I'll say, because after my second period it was nutrition, basically breakfast break, for the US, and for the European audience, so I went to go to the library. It was like upstairs in the second floor, and I see everybody broke the fuck down. And I see everybody broke the fuck down, and I was like, what the fuck is this? you know I don't know what the fuck. And see everybody, oh my god, our boy, our homie died, this and that. I was like, what the fuck? And I hear car accident. I'm like, what the fuck? Car accident. That's very fucking strange. But it's no surprising, because the U.S. has a currency of car accidents. A car accidents, people going in a car accident, either late for work or also doing idiotic things to whatever's happening in their lives. you know but anyway, and I told one of the guys who were like close with this dude, and I don't say his real name, because he's dead, I'm saying. And for the disclaimer before I continue, is that I don't give a fuck about the YouTube guidelines. That'll be my logo, that'll be my slogan. I don't give a fuck. So sorry for the disclaimer, but let me continue. And I was telling this homeboy, I don't know, but it was a classmate in my third period. It was history. And I was like telling him, like, hey bro, your homeboy died, and I see his other homeboy, he was crying, and he left home early. And I was like, what the fuck? He was like, yo, that's crazy. And I remember my teacher, because we had a test, I had a test that day, and I was freaking the fuck out, and I was like, oh shit, if I take this test, I'm gonna fail this class. For context, I was doing alright with the history. I didn't like how the history teacher was planning his fucking lessons. That was my biggest issue. For the homework and tests, I got it. As a student, it's our responsibility to handle your own home life, and also how do you do your homework, how to study tests, whatever. And I remember the whole day, everybody was fucking depressed. I mean, the whole day. I mean, and the person I was talking about, Evan, he was in a football team. And it gave me, an eye-opening experience, because and I was pissed, not because of his death, but because of the influence of his death. Because he was playing football, American football. Because I was watching news, and I was hearing stories about how kids would be dying in the practice and shit, because football has that tough culture about, oh, man it up, or oh, that's just a scratch, or that's not an injury, that's what's it called, or you broke your finger, or you broke this and that. It doesn't matter. Just rejoin it and get back in the game. I was pissed mostly about the coaches, because they're the ones, and I was telling my TAs at the time, I was really good friends. I had communicate with them so often, 5 days a week. And I was saying, I'm gonna blame the fucking coaches and the fucking school in general. And the reason is because schools give power to the staff, but there's some staffs that shouldn't have that power or authority, that bully the kids / students. And I was saying, I hope somebody sues. Maybe I'm not looking in the story. I'm seeing it as an outside perspective. And I was like, You know, I hope the school gets sued. I hope the coaches get sued for life because, you know, there's no way this kid. And I found out later he committed suicide. You know, he committed suicide because probably it got too much for him playing football. And I know it takes a toll of your body. You know, it takes a toll of your brain mostly. You know, about the thing called CTE and also the mental health shit. You know. And I was pissed because I'm like, probably the coaches are the ones who influenced him. You know, there's people who went to jail because, you know, they influenced somebody. You know, if you want to see a prime example, watch The Dead Poets Society. It's a really sad movie, you know. And I'll give contents later. But anyway, you know, and it made me think about bullying and victims, you know. Like I said, you know, I saw that as a prime example. I saw it with my own eyes. I heard the story, and I was pissed because the coaches, you know, they influenced him, you know, or probably one of the teammates bullied him to the point where he just fucking killed himself. You know, he couldn't handle it anymore. I wouldn't say he wasn't weak, but his foundations or his friend group probably didn't give him the best support, you know, when it comes to like handling mental health issues, you know. And I was and and for the bullies, you know, I'm gonna target them the most, and I'm gonna target the most the victims. So, you know, both equal criticisms. Bullies, you know, you guys are fucking a disgrace, you know, to this whole fucking planet. You know, you guys are the ones who ruin people's lives when it comes to government level shit, you know, which we're seeing in front of our eyes. You know, government's bullying their own citizen because, you know, of shit that makes no sense in our eyes, but in their eyes it makes sense, you know, whatever delusional reason. And in school, you guys are the ones who make people kill themselves, or they kill you because their trauma starts from you. And not only that, you guys live a good life while the fucking victims are in the gutter, fucking depressed, you know, wishing their life was meaningless, you know, wishing their life should have been better if this person didn't came in their lives, you know, fucked it up and everything, you know. And you guys, the bullies, need to take fucking accountability, you know, even if you did. But I'm just warning you, once you bully someone, you can't go back from it. Even though you could have a redemption arc about, oh, I did this when I was like 15 years old, I did this when I was like 13 or 19, whatever, you know. One day it's gonna come biting your ass and they'll kill you. And there's stories about them. When they become school shooters, they become mass shooters, or even worse, they become terrorists, you know. And shit like this, I'm saying this as a raw perspective to people, and some people know it, you know. So for you bullies, you need to take accountability, you know. But you better make that shit quick, because if not, if it takes you years to realize, oh, I fucked up, you know, or I fucked up, but it's too late, you know. You know, you're living a good life, but the guilt will carry you on. You know, that's what I mean. It will carry you on, and they will come and get you, you know. Not spiritually, but physically. And like I said, there's people whose mental health is all over the chart because someone bullied them, or the parents bullying them, you know. So, you guys need to take accountability for your actions. You better do it quick, like I said, or else it's gonna come and bite you in the ass. You know? So, victims. Look, guys, victims, I understand, I've been there, I've been to the lowest point in my life, I say. I only got the tiny taste, just a tiny taste. Not gonna lie, I was very ignorant. I hear people get bullied, I hear victims, kill themselves, or they commit first degree murder. Because it's on the news. You see it, you hear it, and you feel it. But, and I'll say, I know some of you guys who are victims, some of you are weak. Look, I understand someone bullied you to the fucking core, and I understand it stays with you forever until the day you die. It gets completely erased, but what you victims need to think is forgiveness. Look, I grew up in a Christian household. We're always taught about forgiveness. We're always taught about forgiving the sinners. It sounds very off and retrospective of forgiving the people who hurt you, because you have to forgive the bully, because you're not. What happens is, I know that I've seen some bullying out there. I know it hurts people mostly, but you have to forgive. Not to sound like a religious preacher or anybody, but just move on. But you need to take steps first. I cannot just say move on and then you're gonna be like, what? How? Just forgive him. The first thing you could do is, if you have social media like everybody else, unfollow that person. Unfollow it real quick, because if you keep having it as your reminder when you see their stories, it's gonna get you angry, and to the point where you start making plans about killing them, he or she, whatever. Unfollow them. Second is grab a journal and write down what causes these feelings. And after you write it, analyze on how to improve this, how to improve my mental health. How to improve my mental health. And third, get yourself a better community / friends. Like I said, I know social media is the number one place to find a community, online. What I would do, if you have Instagram, like I said, or mostly Instagram or Discord. The reason I'm not saying Discord, because of its whole shenanigans, or WhatsApp. There you go. Or I know the most hated app on the fucking internet is Reddit. Find a community there, and also plan on researching the community, and ask yourself, will this benefit me? Will this help me? Will this help me become a better person? Or if you're very introvert, what I'm saying, I'm speaking for both parties of introvert and extrovert. So on seeing, or you could do this by yourself, which in the internet call it monk mode, where basically you isolate yourself. Well, like I said, trying to improve, and fourth, or fifth actually, the fifth step is reading. Find a book, or if you have never read in your life, or if you did but you stopped because whatever reason, go back to reading. Which that's what I've done. I'm still continuing reading. Read a book that is up to your level, what you can understand, and just keep reading. It help you for your brain, because it will help you bring out new vocabulary words. Because the whole goal in reading is improving your vocabulary and your presentation talking, basically. So, and also for the victim, these are the best tips I could give you. I'm not that rich man who gives those fake courses, after doing the steps and you have to pay money out of your pocket. No, I'm giving this all for free. I'm telling you, that's what happened to me, and that's how I'm still improving, but, like I said, victims, just fix yourself, because you don't want to have that resentment and grudge. Basically, that's what I'm saying. Resentment or grudge, and you have to carry it almost your whole 20 or 30 plus years of living, and then you die because of resentment. So, and for the victims who are strong-minded, who made it, meaning they haven't killed themselves, they haven't commit first-degree murder or third-degree murder, I'm saying, all I gotta say, those strong-minded victims, who made it, who made it through after being bullied so hard, congratulations. You guys made it. The half of you guys, you made it. You redeemed yourself. You fixed yourself. You fixed the issue you had a long time. And I'll tell you this story. For the strong-minded victim and for the weak victims. That's for my rant. I have a picture in my wallet, actually, of me in middle school, because I was about to graduate. This was during when we were coming out from COVID. There was a kid named Nathan, and also I would say shout out to Nathan mostly. I know there's a lot of Nathans in this YouTube and social media thing, but I want to give him a shout out to Nathan, that you're a great person and you're a great dude who helped me out during my middle school years, because it was so much shit, to me. My life was a little bit shit, as far as I would say, and I want to give you flowers and fucking things, and for the story, he was the one who helped me out, to, what's it called, to be happy. I know this sounds like a person with burdens, pass on with another burdens, as like a chain, but I want to say that thank you so much, Nathan, for helping me out in middle school. And I know we both graduated by now, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope we meet, someday, probably in the near future, or maybe we'll be accidentally bump shoulders, who knows. For, like I said, for strong-minded victims, congratulations, you made it, you succeed, you redeemed yourself. Don't let resentment or depression really get a hold of your mind, and keep improving. So, for the whole moral of this rant, for both parties, bullies, you need to take accountability, because people will, there's karma that will come bite you in the ass. There's all different ways. You gotta take accountability and move on. Move on and change other people's lives. Other victims. Who are suffering. Help them. Victims. For yours message is to redeem yourself. Is to fix yourself. Don't let resentment and depression get a hold of you, because those two things ruin a person's life. And I told you my experience. I saw them People were crying. They were devastated. And I was pissed, me, because of how the school, probably doesn't give a shit about a person's death. And for content about the Dead Poet Society, it's a story about this kid, or about this. It was like a private school / charter school or something like that. It was mostly a private Catholic school. How they portrayed it, about how this kid who hated his parents because of the expectations we're putting on them. And then there was this teacher who talked about being free, to express yourself, don't let the world take your creativity, and he did that, but his parents saw that as a rebellion, like, oh, you're not gonna do this and that. I'm talking about the movie Dead Poet Society. Oh, you're not gonna do that. You're gonna stay with me. I'm pulling you out of the school. And you see the drop of his face, the drop of his face that, he's gonna move, and guess what? He killed himself. And who are the parents blamed for? The fucking teacher. And I'm saying because the teacher was innocent, but since he was charged with the influence of a student, he was fired from his job, and but the students never forget what he did. He changed all the students' lives, so I'm saying this as a prime example. I know there's some innocent teachers who get fucking kicked out, for being too good at their job, for helping students. And I've seen some stories of it too. So yeah, this is my rant and the message for both parties, of bullies and victims. So, YouTube, this is the real honest truth. I'm saying this to in front of you guys, YouTube, the headquarters. I'm saying this, you could take down my video all you want once I finish uploading this, You can take it down all you want, but I'm saying it's the truth and I've seen it. And there's other people who experienced it as well. So, my name is Jubal, and see ya.